Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today to learn more about the San Diego International Airport Part 150 Noise Compatibility Study Update. Today, we're going to talk more about the process, alternatives, and preliminary recommendations of the study. The goal of the meeting is to brief you on those steps already completed to date in this introductory presentation. Then, after the presentation, the workshop will open up where you may ask questions and provide feedback to both the airport and the consultant team. Each step in the process and alternatives evaluation will be the subject of a workshop session, as denoted in this presentation. A Part 150 is intended to develop a balanced and cost-effective program to reduce the number of noise-sensitive land uses affected by aircraft noise. These studies are voluntary, and San Diego International Airport has participated in these programs since 1991, when their first Part 150 study was completed. Since then, the airport has also formed the Airport Noise Advisory Committee, known as ANAC, to advise the airport authority about noise issues. This Part 150 study update complements the updates conducted in 2011 and 2016 and was primarily initiated in response to ANAC recommendations. ANAC had asked the airport authority to consider operational noise procedures that may change the 65 Community Noise Equivalent Level, CNEL. In addition, the official noise exposure maps needed to be updated in order to continue getting federal funding for insulating homes in the Quieter Home Program. To supplement the recommendations of ANAC, we formed two additional advisory groups for the duration of the study. First, a technical advisory committee provided technical advice concerning aircraft performance, flight procedures, and land use and zoning issues. A citizen advisory committee was formed to provide advice from the neighborhoods near the airport. Before we discuss the various noise abatement alternatives, it's important to identify the two required products of the study. First are the noise exposure maps, or we use the abbreviation NEM to refer to these maps. The NEMs show the annual average cumulative noise through a set of contours. The FAA requires the use of the cumulative noise metric. The contours reflect aircraft noise exposure using the Community Noise Equivalent Level, otherwise known as CNEL. In a Part 150 study, there are two maps, the existing and the future. The existing maps reflect noise exposure during the year of 2018, when the study was first initiated. The regulation then requires noise to be evaluated 5 years from when the maps are expected to be submitted. For this study, the maps are expected to be submitted this year, so 2026 is the forecast NEM. The second part of the study is the Noise Compatibility Program, abbreviated as NCP. The NCP documents the measures that were evaluated and determined to meet the purpose of the Part 150 study, which is to reduce the number of noise-sensitive uses affected by aircraft noise and prevent any new non-compatible land uses. Here you can see the existing and future draft noise exposure maps. We start with the existing 2018 contour and then model the forecast contour for 2026, reflecting 5 years into the future. Generally, over time, the type of aircraft operating at the San Diego International Airport are getting quieter as a result of better technology and the phasing out of older aircraft. So the growth in noise between 2018 and 2026 is primarily a product of increasing operations over that time period. In 2018, the airport served 225,570 annual operations. By 2026, the airport is forecast to serve approximately 258,785 annual operations. Building on the noise exposure maps, the next step is to evaluate a series of alternatives to meet the purpose of reducing non-compatible land uses. When we say non-compatible land uses, we're primarily referring to residential units that have not been sound insulated. In a Part 150 study, we look at operational alternatives, facility alternatives, and land use alternatives, as well as administrative alternatives. During today's workshop, we have a station or breakout room in Zoom dedicated to each one of these categories. While Station 1 looks at the background and process of the Part 150 study, Station 2 will discuss some more technical aspects of departure headings revolving around magnetic variation. One of the elements that keeps coming up in public discussions is the need to understand magnetic variation, how it changes over time, and how this affects the way that we look at and talk about operational alternatives. Questions on this and how it affects the operations at the airport and the subsequent way that we model alternatives will be discussed at Station 2. Station 3 will focus on operational and facility alternatives that we analyzed in the study. When we refer to operational alternatives, we're referring to aircraft flight procedures that include the performance of the aircraft as well as the direction of flight. Facility alternatives are those physical developments that might occur at the airport and result in reduced noise. As mentioned previously, a main driver of updating the airport's Part 150 study was the commitment by the authority to analyze the ANAC recommendations. Some of those recommendations focused on concentrating operations over the inlet. Additional alternatives were also modeled that came out of the public and committee comments and feedback. These types of alternatives are evaluated by comparing the 65 CNEL contour with future operations to the 65 CNAL contour with the operational changes. Additional alternatives also focused on facility modifications that, while might not drive changes in the cumulative CNAL contours, could provide some benefits in the single event levels. Alternatives were selected for modeling or additional analysis based on several criteria, the first of which is consistency with the Part 150 requirements. A Part 150 study focuses on reducing the number of non-compatible land uses within the 65 CNEL or greater contour and preventing new non-compatible land uses. This is an important detail because it means that generally shifting noise, which could create new non-compatible land uses, is not considered to meet the Part 150 purpose. We started off by modeling those alternatives that met the intent of the ANAC recommendations. Then the team also took into account the comments from public and committee meetings, as well as input on the website, into account to identify any additional alternatives that might reduce non-compatible land uses. 4 rounds of modeling were subsequently conducted to refine and add alternatives based on the comments. This gave us a range of operational changes that showed what would happen to the 65 CNEL contour under the various alternatives. This slide compares the 65 CNEL for all the operational alternatives that were modeled. The blue contour shows the future 65 CNEL reflecting the current noise abatement procedures for the year 2026. This contour helps us identify the effects of the various alternatives by showing how the contour could change. The goal would be to have an alternative that reduces the area inside the blue contour. As you can see, the alternatives that were modeled all shift the noise either south or elongate the contour, or both, resulting in new non-compatible land uses within the 65 CNEL. As stated previously, shifting noise and creating new non-compatible land uses does not align with the purpose of the Part 150 study. Because the other alternative showed a shift in noise, the team turned to other options that may not have a material impact on the 65 CNEL, but they could reduce noise when considering other ways of measuring noise, such as the single event level. As noted, FAA requires the use of the cumulative metric. However, it's sometimes helpful to look at other metrics to consider noise from those single event levels. The first alternative examined here is the Ground-Based Augmentation System, or GBAS, which is a facility alternative that provides precision, lateral, and vertical guidance to the aircraft when landing. San Diego International Airport currently has a steeper than normal glide path, 3.5 degrees versus 3 degrees, and GBAS could allow for a more repeatable and precise paths for consistency with a 3.5 degree glide path. This technology could also reduce the level segments during descent, requiring less engine thrust. This technology is new and currently only approximately 20 to 25% of the aircraft operating at San Diego today are equipped to use GBAS. These aircraft could see a reduction of 1 to 2 dBA on the east side approach, which would not drive a visible reduction in the cumulative 65 CNEL contour. However, over time, increasing use of this technology could provide more substantial benefits. The second alternative that we looked at that would not affect the 65 CNEL contour, but could affect single event levels, is the use of the Noise Abatement Departure Procedure, or NADP. This involves a takeoff climb procedure that changes the profile of departure from the airport, resulting in a steeper climb than is typical. This slide shows a reduction in the single event levels around the airport, but it would not likely have a large impact on the cumulative metric of CNEL. Station 4 provides additional information on the land use and administrative alternatives that we considered in the study. Land use alternatives are characterized as either remedial, meaning they correct current existing non-compatibilities, or preventative, preventing future non-compatibilities. Land use alternatives include remedial actions such as sound attenuation, otherwise known as the Quieter Home Program. Administrative alternatives include measures such as noise monitoring, fly quiet programs, and future updates to the study. Since this is a Part 150 study update, most of the land use and administrative alternatives are the same as previous studies. Therefore, the team focused on those alternatives that might be tweaked or improved to provide additional benefit. Land use alternatives include the continued support of preventative measures. This includes supporting the San Diego County International Airport Land Use Commission and other local land use development and compatibility planning processes that prevent the creation of new non-compatible land uses close to the airport. Additionally, the Quieter Home program would be updated and tied to the future 2026 noise exposure map, which provides potential eligibility for sound insulation. This boundary is based on the future 65 CNEL contour, which is often rounded to the nearest physical feature, such as roads. The eligibility also includes the insulation of non-residential structures, such as schools. Administrative alternatives include the following continued measures, primarily surrounding the continued support of the noise program already in place at the airport. Additionally, the study is recommending some additional revisions to the Fly Quiet program to track additional metrics relative to the phasing out of earlier, noisier aircraft over time. New alternatives include implementing portable noise monitoring, allowing the airport to expand their permanent noise monitoring program with a portable noise monitor to check additional areas of concern for the community. The placement and analysis of this program would be directed by a sound engineer. Stations 1 through 4 really focus on the process and alternatives examined throughout the 150 study. At each of these stations, you can ask questions about the technical details of the inputs, processes, alternatives analyzed, and provide your comments on those types of alternatives. At Station 5, we really want to focus on how preliminary recommendations were drafted for this meeting. The preliminary recommendations were developed by the consultants for consideration of the airport and the public. These recommendations are based on the consistency with Part 150 study to reduce non-compatible land uses and prevent new non-compatible land uses, the general feasibility of the alternatives within the 65 CNEL, public and committee discussions, as well as the expertise of our team. The recommendations also build on the mature noise program already in place at the airport. The recommendations of the study are included on this slide. It's important to note that the noise program for San Diego International Airport is mature, meaning that it has been in place for many years and undergone several revisions. This study is designed to continue on those improvements. All land use and administrative alternatives are included as recommendations. Facility recommendations include the implementation of GBAS if federal funding is available. Most of the operational alternatives resulted in the shifting of noise and resulting new areas of non-compatible land uses when compared to the future 65 CNEL. Therefore, operational changes that resulted in a shift are not recommended. The one operational alternative that did not create new non-compatible land uses, the NADP close-in departure profile, is recommended to move forward as a recommendation due to its potential for single event benefits. This workshop is intended to gather your comments on the preliminary recommendations of the study. After comments are received, the team will compile a set of final recommendations in a draft report that is anticipated to be released in February of 2021. We would like your input at all of the stations and look forward to seeing you in the breakout rooms to hear your questions and comments. We will also be collecting comments after the workshop on the website through February 4th. This information will be included at the end of the workshop. Thank you for your interest and participation in the process.